Discover 3 sinister and spine-chilling horror stories exposed by haunting blizzard nights. The wind screamed like a siren as Claire crowded her 2 young children, Mia and Leo, into the cozy living room of their Willows Creek home. Snow fell thick and fast, swirling in ominous patterns. She hugged them tight, trying to shake off the icy tendrils of unease creeping down her spine. There was something menacing about this blizzard, something sinister hiding beneath the snowflakes. With power lines groaning under the weight of the storm, she could feel it deep in her bones. The storm was unlike any other. Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. The shriek of the wind outside intensified, rattling the windows. Claire's heart raced, panic lanced her, and the shadows in the room felt different, threatening, alive. She fumbled for her phone for light, and her screen revealed unread messages from concerned neighbors. Mr. Larkin, the town's cheerful barbecue king and someone Claire trusted, had vanished. The news sent chills racing through her, a cold sweat forming on her temples. They had just seen him last week, laughing by the grill, a warm smile on his face. But now, gone. Her stomach dropped as one chilling thought took shape. What were those whispers outside? The neighborhood's whispers turned into a tide of panic over the next hours. Rumors rippled through the houses. Did anyone see the snowman? The local folklore, once dismissed as children's tales meant to keep them in line, now hung heavy in the air like the snow outside, turning her neighbors into suspicious specters. "You know what they say," someone murmured. "Children have gone missing during storms. You never know who might be lurking." Claire clutched her kids closer, each sound outside twisted in her mind. Each crunch of snow beneath boots felt like a warning. In a desperate attempt to find candles, she trekked into the attic, her breath fogging in the cold, musty air. As she dug through boxes, Mia's gleeful shout broke the tension as she stumbled upon a hidden trapdoor. With a rush of curiosity, they opened it, revealing a cramped, dusty space filled with old toys and yellowed newspaper clippings. Claire's heart sank as she scanned the chilling headlines. Children vanished during blizzards, with haunting connections to Mr. Larkin's jovial face. The horror sunk deeper into the pit of her stomach. Could he have been more than just the friendly neighbor? Chilled to the bone, Claire felt the walls closing in. A flicker of movement outside glared through the frosty window, people talking in hushed, urgent tones. She could feel the panic bubbling behind her, urging her to keep the kids safe, but every moment of false hope turned into terror. With each whispered warning, her trust in the very fabric of their suburb began to unravel. The sense of community felt like a herd of frightened sheep, ready to run wild and scared. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications, so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A loud crash erupted from the direction of Mr. Larkin's house, the noise piercing through the storm like thunder, a dreadful jolt through Claire's core. Heart racing, she felt the frost of dread settle in. The storm raged both outside and within, her mind running wild. Had the snowman claimed another victim? What had she really stumbled upon? Claire's grip on her children tightened as fear curled around her heart, suffocating any sense of safety. Was it time to uncover the truth about the snowman, or did she need to shield her family from what lurked in the dark? The howling winds carried whispers of uncertainty, but one thing was clear. This blizzard was just beginning to reveal the horrors buried beneath the town's facade. What awaited them in the heart of the storm? A deafening silence followed the crash, audibly smothered by the howling wind. Claire stood frozen, breath hitching in her throat. The children clung to her legs, wide-eyed, sensing her tension. What had that noise been? And why was it coming from Mr. Larkin's house? She hesitated for a moment, then decided they couldn't just hide away in their home, not while something or someone was out there. "Stay close, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. She led Mia and Leo towards the front door, the freezing air swirling through the crack, only adding to her dread. Each step felt heavy with the weight of unknowing. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the eerie storm outside. The world shifted when they stepped out, enveloped by the ferocity of the blizzard, making visibility almost non-existent. As they made their way down the dimly lit porch, the crunch of their boots felt like a drumbeat of impending disaster. They trudged into the swirling white, anxiety prickling the back of Claire's neck. No sign of life, just the relentless wail of the wind and the swirling snow that seemed to dance maliciously. Glancing from side to side, she felt like prey, with something unseen stalking in the shadows. Suddenly, a jarring noise erupted, a distinct thud against the snow, far too close for comfort. Claire felt her stomach turn, and she instinctively shielded her children behind her. "Listen," she breathed, straining to hear anything beyond the storm. "Mommy, I'm scared," Mia murmured, her tiny voice trembling. "I know, sweetie, me too," Claire admitted. That only made Mia whimper, pressing her face into Claire's side. Claire's resolve wavered. The urge to flee was palpable. But if they ran back, would they be safe? Then another sound, a voice, faint but growing clearer amidst the blizzard's fury. "Help! Please!" It was a man, his voice laced with desperation. "Mr. Larkin!" Claire shouted, hope lighting a flicker in her chest. Was he trapped out here? "Help!" The voice rasped again, thrumming with urgency. "Stay here! Don't move!" Claire commanded, tearing her gaze from the children and scanning the vicinity. Just beyond their dreary little street lay Mr. Larkin's house, now shrouded in swirling snow, its silhouette blurred and foreboding. She stepped forward, the weight of dread bearing down on her. With each step, her instincts screamed to turn back, but the man's voice echoed in her ears, pulling at her heart. He needed help. She needed to help him. She needed to... The door of Mr. Larkin's house hung ajar as Claire approached. A flicker of dim light seemed to beckon her in. She reached for the knob, heart racing. "Come on!" she called to Mia and Leo, who clung to the porch railing, their wide eyes filled with fear. "Mommy!" Leo whimpered, not daring to move. "Just a moment!" she shouted back, unable to contain her mounting urgency. She pushed the door wider, the creaking sound lost in the whirling wind. The room within was dark, save for the light pooling from an unknown source deep inside. Every instinct warned her against it, yet she crossed the threshold, stepping into the unknown. As she ventured further, the air grew heavy, stifled by the scent of decay and something sickly sweet. The light flickered ahead, illuminating shapes that sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. Was Mr. Larkin truly in danger, or was something darker waiting for her? Suddenly, the front door slammed shut behind her with a deafening thud, cutting off the howling wind. Claire jolted, dread pooling in her stomach. She wasn't alone anymore. A cold whisper curled through the air, sinister and mocking, wrapping around her like a snake. "You shouldn't have come here." Claire spun around, heart racing as shadows twisted into forms. She clutched her children, the chill of fear paralyzing her. What had she walked into? Desperate to protect her children, she struggled to resist the suffocating darkness, inching closer, merciless and thick. The voice echoed again, this time with laughter that sent chills down her spine. "You'll never leave, not during a blizzard like this." Outside, the blizzard raged on, but inside the true horror had only just begun. What ancient secret hid in laughter? And what price would she pay to unravel it? Claire's heart hammered in her chest as she huddled her children close, the shadows around them writhing like dark serpents. Her mind raced, echoing with the whispered warning that hung in the frosty air. "You shouldn't have come here." The words coiled around her, tightening like a noose. "What do you want?" she shouted into the oppressive darkness. Her own voice sounded lost, swallowed by the heavy silence that followed. "Only what you owe," the voice sneered, its timbre thick with malice. Shapes shifted and lurked just outside her line of sight, their outlines indistinct yet unmistakably present. She could feel their hunger, a palpable craving that sent icy fingers creeping down her spine. "Mommy?" Leo quivered against her, eyes wide, reflecting the trembling light's flickering glow. "Quiet, sweetheart," she urged, battle-worn but resolute. A surge of protectiveness coursed through her. They needed to escape. The dim light ebbed, casting long shadows that danced menacingly across the walls. Claire's gaze darted around, searching for a means of escape. The way she came in was blocked. The front door stood ominously shut. She could almost hear it mocking her, as if it delighted in her trapped state. "Help us get out of here," Claire screamed, and to her surprise, the chilling laughter faded, replaced by rasping breaths that filled the room like fog. They came from all around, a chorus of despair mingling with cruel delight. "Too late for that," another voice crooned, laced with a sickly sweetness that made Claire's stomach churn. Her mind raced. She thought of the children, alone in the wintry hell outside, and the terrifying isolation of this house. "We need to find Mr. Larkin," she shouted, though dread twisted in her gut with each word. What if he too were part of this nightmare? "Mr. Larkin," one voice broke away from the rest, dripping with mockery. "He's quite occupied." With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Claire grabbed Mia's and Leo's hands, pulling them deeper into the house, away from the shadows pressing behind. The air grew thicker, suffused with the smell of decay and something far worse, paralyzed fear. A door loomed ahead, slightly ajar, revealing inky blackness beyond. Claire hesitated, feeling her breath hitch. "What if it's a trap?" she whispered to herself, but in her heart she knew she had to try. "Mommy!" Mia cried, squeezing Claire's hand tighter, her voice trembling. "It's okay, I promise, just stay with me," she replied, forcing a tremor of courage into her voice. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The weight of dread wrapped around them, but as they crossed the threshold, lights blinked on one by one, illuminating walls plastered with strange markings. They looked almost ancient, glowing faintly in the dark, casting eerie shadows that twisted grotesquely. "What is this?" Claire breathed, her mind racing. The cold touch of fear gripped her heart, but there was something else, an ancient power coiled in the air, electric with latent energy. Then she noticed the center of the room. A figure sat bound in darkness, hunched over. "Mr. Larkin!" she called, hope rising again, but deep horror crashed down when he lifted his bloodied face. His eyes were hollow, shimmering with desperation. "Help me!" he croaked, but the sinister laughter resumed, louder, closer, surrounding them. "No!" Claire screamed, backing away, her children clutching at her legs. The darkness surged forward like a tidal wave, swallowing the light around them. Just before it enveloped them, Claire turned. From deep within, a chilling, calm whisper beckoned her. The truth is further still. With one last surge of bravery, Claire clutched her children tight, whispering a silent prayer. They had to find the source, the answer that could save them. But would it be enough? What awaited them in the depths of this shadowy hell? Claire's heart raced as the shadows charged towards them, a hungry mass of darkness, breathing heavy and eager. She pulled her children closer, their frightened faces illuminated briefly by flickering lights overhead. "We need to find a way out," she yelled against the cacophony of taunting laughter. "Mommy, I'm scared." Leo's voice quivered, tears glistening in his eyes. It twisted something deep inside her, fear, anger, a desperate need to protect. "Keep moving," she urged, dragging them toward a corner, searching for a shadowy passage that might lead to escape. But the room felt like a prison, each step reverberating with the sinister promises of the unseen. Before them loomed an altar, draped with heavy fabric that shone with an oily sheen, pulsating like a heartbeat. The air turned heavy, as if saturated with the weight of unspeakable dread. "What is this place?" Mia whispered, fear evident in her quivering voice. Claire scanned the writings on the walls. They seemed to squirm under her gaze, phrases in a language she couldn't understand, looping into each other. Then, just for a moment, she felt a flicker of recognition. Something malevolent, something she should have known. Then came a thud, a heavy, wet sound. Claire felt the ground shake beneath her feet. His hollow eyes stared back at her from the altar, glistening with an unnatural light. "They're hungry, Claire," Mr. Larkin rasped, his voice cracking like dry branches. "They need more." "What do you mean?" Fright turned her stomach to knots. The shadows danced toward them, their edges swirling like smoke, whispering promises that clawed at her mind. "You've disturbed the balance. They will take what's theirs." He raised his gnarled hands toward the children, a twisted plea buried in his agony. "Stay away from them!" Claire spat, fury mixing with fear. She felt their grips tighten on her legs, the weight of her children anchoring her in a turmoil of desperation. "Leave before it's too late!" Mr. Larkin shouted, his voice catching like a scream caught in a net. "You have to—" Before he could finish, dark tendrils snaked out from the altar, engulfing him in a vile embrace. His anguished cries rose above the cacophony, a piercing sound of raw terror, mingling with the sinister laughter that escalated into a sinister crescendo. "No! Stop!" Claire screamed, covering her children's ears, but the shadows coiled tighter, their cold presence creeping closer. She felt the air thicken, every breath labored as if shrouded in syrup. "The truth lies beyond—" The whisper came again, rolling through the room like a chilling wind. Claire's resolve hardened. They had to find whatever this was, whatever it wanted. "Follow me," she bellowed, charging towards a darkened passage, spilling into the unknown, pulling Leo and Mia behind her. They sprinted, each step landing in the echo of distant, mournful wails that clawed at her sanity. As they gained momentum, one of the walls shimmered, showing movement that seemed to shift just out of reach. Claire glanced back, the altar's energy crackling like a storm, its tendrils now seeking the exit they fled. "Hurry!" she urged, panic tightening around her heart. With each hurried second the passage narrowed, shadows whispering louder, urging them deeper into the unknown. Her thoughts raced, a feverish pulse of dread. Where would this lead them? What awaited beyond the veil of shadow? The promise of salvation, or a deeper nightmare? The walls vibrated with a sinister hum, intensifying pain in her chest as they plunged into the darkness ahead, leaving behind the echo of despair. Claire pushed through the suffocating darkness, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The corridor seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, constricting around them like a tightening noose. Each hurried step resonated, mingling with disembodied whispers that promised ever more despair. Behind her, the distant echo of Mr. Larkin's screams haunted her, his frantic pleas swallowed by an insatiable void. "Mommy, where are we going?" Leo whispered, his small voice trembling under the weight of panic. Claire squeezed his hand tighter, determination overshadowing her own fear. "We're getting out, Leo. Just hold on." She pushed forward, her heart hammering against her chest as the walls began to writhe and shimmer, mirroring her desperation. Suddenly, a flickering light broke through the oppressive gloom ahead. It danced like a beacon, promising refuge. "There!" she exclaimed, urgency clawing at her throat. As they raced toward it, the laughter from the shadows morphed into shrieks of indignation. As though the dark entities were angrier for their escape, they burst into a larger chamber. The light was sickly, an unnatural glow emitting from a massive stone sculpture in the center. A twisted figure, with elongated limbs and hollow eyes that seemed to follow them. Its mouth was weeping a viscous black substance that pooled on the floor, threading toward Claire and the kids like dark tendrils eager for them. "Mia! Leo! Step back!" Claire shouted. She instinctively moved in front of them, her heart drumming as an overwhelming wave of dread washed over her. Mia, still clutching her teddy bear, trembled. "What is that thing, Mommy? Why does it look like it's alive?" The figure shuddered, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. The eyes flickered, mirroring her fear, and for a brief moment she was certain it knew them, recognized their presence. Before she could react, the whispers surged again, louder this time, wrapping around her mind like icy fingers. "Sacrifice, balance, give." The words slithered through her thoughts, unsettling her with fleeting memories she couldn't grasp fully. It felt like she had walked this path before, yet she couldn't remember when or why. "What do we do?" Leo whimpered, his face pale, beads of sweat dotting his forehead. "Trust me," she said, gripping their hands tightly as if they were a lifeline. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." But the shadows had encroached upon them again, the darkness swirling with a malicious intent as one particularly thick tendril reached out. It wrapped around Leo's ankle, pulling him backward with a forceful insistence. "Let him go!" Claire screamed, lunging toward her son. The moment was visceral, and everything inside her screamed for action. She could feel the icy breath of the shadows chilling her to the core. In a desperate panic, Claire seized a jagged piece of stone from the ground and swung it at the creeping shadow. The moment the stone connected, an explosion of light erupted, shattering the darkness with a brilliant flash that momentarily blinded them. When the light dimmed, the tendril recoiled as if burned, and Leo fell safe into her arms. But in the space between heartbeats, they noticed the sculpture had shifted, now bearing an even more sinister grin. The eyes had turned blood-red, and it seemed to swell with malicious joy, feeding off the chaos. "They're stronger now." Mia's voice trembled. "What do we do?" Claire's mind raced. "We need to leave this place now." She turned to the opposite wall, where an opening shimmered faintly, a reflection of the light that had pierced the darkness. As they dashed toward it, the chamber erupted with anguished howls, shadows racing after them, transforming the laughter into a menacing roar. The weight of pursuers pressed heavily on her back, almost tangible as they reached the opening. Claire bolted through, pulling her children behind her, just as a shriek echoed that threatened to split the air. But the wall closed behind them with a deafening clap, cutting off the darkness. They stumbled into a narrow tunnel, breathless and shaken. But the oppressive air still hung heavy, and a deeper dread filled her heart as they realized they had not escaped so easily. "What now?" Leo asked, his small voice breaking through the silence. Claire looked ahead, dread pooling in her stomach. "We keep moving," she said, but uncertainty mingled with determination. As shadows flickered just beyond the tunnel entrance, the chilling question hung in the air. What awaited them in this endless maze? The tunnel pressed in around them, the walls slick and glistening under the dim light that flickered sporadically like an anxious heartbeat. Each breath Claire took filled her lungs with damp, rancid air that smelled of decay, a stark reminder that they were far from safe. Mia clung tightly to her bear, her wide eyes searching the gloom. "Mummy, I can't see anything." Her voice quavered, cracking under the weight of despair. "Just stay close," Claire urged, although her own heart was pounding, racing against uncertainty and fear. "We have to keep moving." But the entrance they had emerged from was no longer visible, swallowed completely by the shadows. The path ahead coiled and twisted like a serpent, threatening to lead them even deeper into the abyss. Suddenly the whispers returned, slithering around her like cold fog. "Find the key!" It hissed through the darkness, deepening the chill that had settled in Claire's bones. "Mommy, what's that?" Leo tugged at her sleeve, his voice barely a whisper. He pointed to the far end of the tunnel, where the air shimmered as if it were alive. Claire squinted into the distance, assembling the fractured pieces of her scattered thoughts. "Maybe it's another way out, Leo." She tried to inject hope into her own voice, forcing herself to believe it. As they moved cautiously forward, the ground beneath their feet shifted, sending sharp stone shards biting into Claire's worn shoes, a painful reminder of their perilous situation. Shivers danced down her spine, and shadows seemed to stretch out of the walls, coming closer, whispering secrets only meant for the damned. "What if it leads us to the monster?" Mia whispered, her grip tightening on the bear. Fear loomed in her voice, making it tremble like a fragile leaf in a storm. "We'll face it together," Claire insisted, although a lump of terror sat heavy in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to shield her children from the unknown, but she knew doing so would mean losing them. The shimmering light grew brighter, catching their attention. Claire's heart raced. They had to reach it. She picked up the pace, urging her kids along. The whispers intensified, rising and falling like a chorus of anger. "Sacrifice, find the key." They came upon a small alcove, the source of the shimmering light, a large, ancient door, carved with menacing symbols pulsating with an eerie glow. At its center, a keyhole gaped like a mouth, waiting to be fed. The moment they stepped into the alcove, the air crackled with palpable tension. An awful silence replaced the whispering, as if the very shadows were holding their breath, waiting for a decision. "What do we do now?" Leo asked, his eyes reflecting the swirling chaos around them. "We need to find the key, Leo. It must be here somewhere," Claire replied, panic bubbling just beneath the surface. But as the realization struck, a feeling of dread seeped into her bones. "What if it's—" Before she could finish, shadows erupted from the walls, dark tendrils snaking toward them again, hungry and relentless. They curled around the doorway, pulling tight, suffocating the light. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of screams. "Run!" Claire cried, grabbing Leo's hand and urging Mia forward, but the shadows surged, growing thicker, blocking their escape. As they gasped for air, mirroring the dismay in each other's eyes, Claire felt her heart plummet. "We have to find the key, or we'll never escape this nightmare." A frigid laugh echoed through the darkness, the voice dripping with malice. "You cannot leave without the key. Your children will pay the price." Claire's stomach twisted. "What do you want?" she screamed, her voice echoing in despair. Then the whispers fell silent. The shadows bated breath. Everything hung heavy. Claire realized in horror that the whispers had not just been asking for a key. They craved a sacrifice. "What do we do?" Mia pleaded, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Claire felt a weight in her chest, a sickening truth that slithered through her mind. They were being hunted, and she could feel it. Protection versus the unimaginable choice ahead. The doorway loomed ominously before them, but one question hung heavy in the air. A twisted decision yet to be forged. Was saving her children worth the ultimate sacrifice? As dread sank in, they turned toward the shadows once more. What now awaited them in the choking darkness? The air grew heavy, almost tangible, as the shadows tightened their grip, stealing away the last remnants of light. Claire's heart thundered in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but there was nowhere to go. They were trapped, ensnared in a malevolent web spun from nightmares. "Mommy!" Mia whimpered, her voice barely a crack against the engulfing darkness. Claire glanced down, seeing the fear mirrored in her children's faces. They needed her strength. "Stay behind me!" Claire shouted, asserting her role as their protector. Her voice echoed loudly, rebounding off the rough walls as if mocking her bravery. The darkness shifted, edges wavered, and Claire felt the atmosphere crackle with energy. The shadows throbbed and pulsed, alive with malice. The key must be found. The desperate whispers wrapped around her like icy fingers, each syllable slipping into her skin, barbed with dread. Then out of the suffocating gloom, a shape emerged, a figure flickering in and out of sight, barely staying anchored in reality. It looked like a human, tall, sinewy, with twisted limbs that looked like blackened roots. Its head, obscured in shadow, turned toward her, and Claire felt an instinctual revulsion coursing through her veins. "Leave or be left with nothing," it hissed, a voice like gravel skimming against iron. "Get away from us!" Claire shouted, feeling the power of a mother's fury surge within her. She stepped forward, instinctively putting herself between the figure and her children. The creature's lips twisted into what could only be described as a grin. "Sacrifice leads to salvation, but salvation demands cost," it rasped, as mist dripped from its gnarled fingertips and pooled at the base of the door. "Mia, Leo, we need to think," Claire said, desperation creeping into her voice. "We have to find that key." She looked back to the ancient door, the malevolent symbols pulsating in response to the figure's presence. "What kind of key?" Leo asked, his voice quaking. What if it's your key?" Claire's heart dropped. "What do you mean?" Mia clutched her bear tighter. "The whispers. They want you to give something important." The walls seemed to close in, breathing around them, the shadows swelling into a thick fog. Claire's pulse quickened. No, I won't sacrifice anything." With a sudden movement, the figure lunged forward, the shadows exploding into a cacophony of screams. The force threw Claire back, causing her to stumble. She fell to her knees, her arms barely containing Mia and Leo, whose terrified faces screamed for their safety. In the chaos, Claire glimpsed something glittering within the fog, a faint outline, a glimmer of hope. It flickered like a dying ember, both inviting and chilling. "The key!" she yelled, grasping at the chance. Throwing aside her fear, she crawled toward the gleam, feeling the cold tendrils of shadow whip around her ankles, a warning thrumming deep within her bones. "Hold on!" she screamed back at her kids, struggling against the shadows, holding her back. As Claire reached for the source of light, the shadows hissed, a storm of indignation spiraling around her. "Your hope will lead to despair," they shrieked, as her fingers wrapped around a cold, metallic object. With a gasp, Claire pulled it free. The key! It shimmered, reflecting the dim light like a beacon in the dark. But as the shadows recoiled from its brilliance, Claire felt a twinge of dread. Was it truly the answer, or merely a new chain to bind them even deeper into the darkness? In that moment of standoff, Claire's heart raced with one undeniable truth. The price of freedom was now in her hands. But at what cost would salvation come? With her children's wide eyes locked onto her, Claire clutched the key tightly, realizing the shadow's whispers had not been mere taunts. They were real, and the air crackled with anticipation. What would happen next? The echoes of the darkness began to swell again, the shadows eager for the unfolding fate. The moment Claire grasped the key, a surge of energy pulsated from it, shaking the very foundation of the room. The metallic chill of the object radiated through her fingers, leaving an unsettling warmth along her skin. It was beautiful, yet terrifying, an enigma drawing her deeper into dread. "Mama, what's happening?" Mia cried, pressing against Claire's leg, her small hands trembling. The figure loomed closer, its shadowy form distorting into something more grotesque, each movement an unnatural twist of limbs. "You dare to hold it, but it demands your essence," it shrieked, voice now a howling storm. Claire's heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" "Sacrifice. For entry. You must choose." It grinned wider, shadows writhing like serpents around its feet. The weight of her decision pressed down on her chest. Leo squeezed Mia's hand, his eyes darting between the key and the figure. "We can't give anything. It'll take you, Mom." "I will not give anything," Claire shouted, clutching the key tighter. Its presence felt daunting, almost malevolent. The whispers, once distant, now converged into a unified chant, drowning her in a sea of noise. Salvation through pain, freedom through loss. The shadows danced more violently, clawing at her, pulling back only when the key shimmered defiantly. But what if they were right? What if the cost was unavoidable? Claire turned the key, hoping to find escape, but the door remained silent. Why won't it work? Panic gnawed at her reason. End all doubts and enter, the figure cooed, each word wrapped in silk and venom. You will feel it. The truth of choice is powerful. Embrace it. With every pulse of the key, images flashed vividly before her eyes, her children, their laughter, their futures. But alongside that prospect flickered dark options, sacrifices of all she held dear, echoing promises of safety if only she would relinquish a piece of her soul. Mia's cry broke through the chaos, a high-pitched plea that cut through the noise. Don't listen, you're stronger than them. Strength isn't enough, Claire thought, the shadows pulling at her instincts, pushing her to bow to their demands. The shadows thickened, stretching toward her, eager, coiling around her children, drawing dangerously close. No! Claire screamed and thrust the key toward the figure. If you want something, this is all you'll get. The key glinted in defiance as she held it out, battling fear and darkness surrounding her heart. In a barbaric twist of fate, the figure howled, recoiling from the light. You choose destruction. It lashed out, shadows contorted into grasping claws, aiming straight for Mia and Leo. Feeling the surge of maternal rage, Claire jerked the key back and turned it fiercely, hoping for any response. I demand you let them go. The shadows froze. A stillness washed over the room, heavy as potential disaster lurked just beneath the surface. The figure gnarled its twisted face and then, without a word, faded into an engulfing dark cloud, leaving Claire with merely a whisper of its venomous promises. Her heart still racing, Claire focused on her children, fear-stricken, yet alive in the encroaching gloom. Let's go, she urged, darting toward the door. We can still. The floor beneath her cracked. A loud groan echoed through the chamber. The key shimmered in her hands, but she felt a heavy tether binding her to the room, as if the shadows had claimed a part of her already. They knew she would fight for her children, but what price would they demand next? As the shadows twitched again, she realized escape was never about fleeing. It was about understanding what she was truly willing to sacrifice to save her family. But as they stood at the threshold, a voice lingered in the air, low and filled with mirth. You may leave, but something must stay. Claire's breath caught. What would the darkness take when they did escape? Could a sacrifice be avoided? Would it want a piece of her? Or worse, a piece of Mia or Leo? Nothing could prepare her for the truth lurking behind that key, waiting to unveil more horrors than she could ever imagine. A glimpse of the terror still awaited them. What would it ask for next? The crack in the floor widened, jagged and ominous, like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. Claire clutched the key fiercely, its coldness biting into her palm as if it were a living thing, pleading for a decision. We have to go now, she urged, her voice trembling. But the shadows danced again, a mocking parade around her feet. Their whispers escalated into a deafening roar, pulling at the edges of Claire's panic-fueled thoughts. What will you give? What will you sacrifice? Mia squeezed Claire's leg tighter, her wide eyes reflecting the chaos around them. Don't let them win, Mama, she cried, her innocence shining through the horror. Mommy won't let anything take you, Claire barked, forcing her throat to calm, but adrenaline shot through her like electricity. Leo stood between them, eyes darting between the cracks and the swirling dark, desperate to protect his little sister. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, the intensity blurring at the edges. Each shadow became a figure, a twisted doppelganger, each one whispering their wishes and wants, dark multiplications of herself, eager to take form. One of you must stay, they hissed, and with every syllable the room constricted tighter, like a serpent squeezing its prey. No! Claire gasped, shaking her head fiercely, desperate not to succumb. Not my children! Never them! Yet an impossible weight pressed on her mind, memories scrambling to the surface, the sacrifice her mother had made, the stories of old whispered whole nights. Without hesitation she snapped back, "I'll offer myself, just let them go." As the words spilled from her mouth, a ghastly, pleased laughter erupted from the shadows. A mother's love. "Such a sweet offering," they jeered. "Mum, no, please!" Leo's voice cut through the din, panic bleeding into his words. "Leo, it's the only way!" Claire shouted back, tearing up as the raw truth throbbed in her chest. The shadows quivered with delight, as if relishing her desperation. Mia pulled away, her small frame trembling as she stared at the dark figures, still wrapped in their malicious embrace. "You're not going to disappear. You can't!" The vision of her children's futures flickered in her mind like a dying flame. She imagined them grown up, laughing, living free from the terror surrounding them. "They deserve to live without your curse." The shadowy figure slithered closer, gluttonous, its snake-like tendrils stretching out. "If you think to bargain, make it worth it." Suddenly, Claire felt a lift in her heart. The key. She couldn't let it be a mere object of desire. It was power. "No, I won't just relinquish myself. You want something? I'll take control." With a ferocious snap, she thrust the key into the jagged rift opening beneath her, praying it would end the twisted game. A bright light burst forth, pushing against the shadows as they shrieked in agony. From her hand, a brilliant stream surged forward like life itself, boiling into a torrent that seared through the darkness. But as light splintered in all directions, Claire felt something fracture inside her. Panic twisted her gut as she stumbled, memories slipping away like grains of sand. "Mama!" Mia screamed, a piercing sound against the chaos erupting around them. As the room shook violently, the shadows twisted and writhed, collapsing upon themselves. The walls pulsed, the door groaning as if allying with Claire against the darkness. But as the shadows fell, one still slithered closer, seeking her, tantalizingly persistent. "You will keep what you offer," it hissed, coiling tighter around her ankle. In that moment, Claire realized that figment of sacrifice would not be something she alone would hold. It could take what she loved most. Desperation clawed at her as she felt a ferocious pull from the dark creature dragging her back. Was it trying to claim her, or her family? "What do you want from me?" she shouted, battling with all her strength, her children screaming behind her. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her, wrapping around them. Fear seized Claire's heart anew. Would she lose everything? The key shimmered again, threatening and inviting as the swell of shadows filled the air. One more choice remained for Claire, but who would pay the price? As the room began to eclipse in yawning darkness, Claire understood. It was no longer about just an escape. It was about the consequences of their freedom and the horrific cost of existence that awaited them beyond this threshold. What would they have to endure to find peace in a realm hungry for their souls? And what would they leave behind if they succeeded? The shadows whipped around Claire's feet, their cold tendrils coiling tighter with every breath she took. Panic clawed at her throat as she faced the swirl of darkness. The room pulsed like a living heartbeat, echoing her fear. "Mama!" Mia's voice broke through the hysteria, trembling with a child's innocent terror. "Don't leave us! Don't leave! I'll never leave you!" Claire screamed back, clutching the key tighter as if it were a lifeline. Her heart raced, her thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. The shadows swirled ominously, taunting her with their whispered promises. "We'll take something precious for the cost of escape." "No!" Claire roared, feeling a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You can't take them away from me!" For a moment, the dim light flickered, illuminating the shadows in stark relief against the cold stone walls. Claire's gaze darted towards the crumbling door, their only path to freedom. Behind her, the darkness writhed and pulsed, eager for its next victim. Yet, even as the shadows reached for her, A single thought flickered through her mind. Sacrifice did not need to mean loss. "Enough!" she shouted, the command echoing through the oppressive space. "I will not make this choice lightly. You will not have my children." The laughter from the shadows turned into growls, twisted and hungry. "But you have leaned towards sacrifice so readily. What makes this time different?" The key shimmered in her hand, a source of power and choice. Claire's resolve hardened. "I'll trade my own despair for theirs. I'll offer my fears, my pain, my very essence. But you will not take what is mine." With a surge of defiance, she thrust the key toward the door, hoping it would open into a realm free from terror. The moment she did, the shadows recoiled. Light burst from the key as though a sun had ignited. With a blinding flash, it burned through the clasp of darkness, illuminating the faces of her children behind her. "Mama!" Leo cried, clinging tightly to Mia. The shadows screeched, their malevolence twisting like a storm. "No! No!" they hissed as the light became blinding. "Here! Take my fear! Take my doubts!" Claire shouted, pouring every ounce of her anguish into the key. A radiant beam shot from her heart, joining with the key in a brilliant explosion of light. The shadows were ripped apart, dissipating like smoke before a fierce gale. Claire's body shook with the act, the power pulsing through her, but she felt a warmth seep into her soul, pushing back the icy dread. They were free. They had to be. As the swirling darkness shattered, the door creaked open, revealing a sunlit path. "Go!" Claire urged, her mother's love surging within her. "Run to the light!" Mia and Leo raced ahead, their laughter erupting like music into the open air. The warmth wrapped around them, but Claire hesitated, sensing the lingering shadows clawing at her heels. "What will you pay, Claire?" The echoes of the entity whispered, lingering in the place where darkness once danced. "Enough!" she cried, stepping through the threshold, allowing the key to fall to the ground. "I choose to stand for my family. The cost of freedom is love, and my love is stronger than your darkness." The shadows surged, one last desperate lunge. But Claire stood firm, holding her ground, love radiating from her in waves. "You will never have us. My children carry my heart." As the light exploded in a dazzling burst, the remnants of darkness disintegrated, banished into nothingness. Claire felt the rush of power enveloping them, a promise that love would always triumph. With one final gasp, she stepped fully into the light, collapsing into the radiant warmth that now filled her heart and lungs. Mia and Leo turned back, sprinting towards her, their faces lit with joy. "Mommy, you did it!" Tears streamed down Claire's cheeks as she embraced them tightly. "We did it together," she whispered, gratitude washing over her. The storm faded into the distance, the blizzard melting into clear blue skies above Willow's Creek. They stood as a family, breathing freely for the first time. The horror that had once gripped them receded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of safety and love. They had faced down darkness and emerged united. But deep inside, Claire knew that while they had escaped, echoes of the shadows would always remain part of their story. Sometimes, the deepest scars taught the strongest lessons. And as they walked away from the place of terror, the warmth of the sun flickered on their backs, guiding them into a future where love was more powerful than fear. As they ventured forward, a single thought settled firmly in Claire's heart. She would always protect her children, ensuring that the shadows would never threaten them again. Life may be filled with darkness, but love would forever be their guiding light. Now this is your moment to step into the light. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on our next exclusive stories that thrill and chill. Smash that like button now. It fuels our journey through the darkest tales. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this wild ride. Your voices matter. And for the love of everything that gives you chills, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Your support is everything.